Very much, Corey, for being here today. This is obviously a critical time for FEMA, and your time, especially as the third major hurricane makes landfall in, 3 weeks? So let's start with that. Last week, DHS Secretary Elaine Duke sent a memorandum to agencies across government asking them to make workers available to help in relief and recovery efforts from Harvey and Irma under the Surge Capacity Forces option, which was created after Katrina. It's the first time DHS has ever gone outside of the department to do this. Tell us about that. What is that? How does that work, and what does that really mean?
So what we found is this is a unique opportunity for you to be able to help serve survivors. So what we found during Sandy was when we initiated it the first time, it was just within DHS, and it gave everybody an opportunity within DHS to help FEMA deploy and support survivors firsthand. So we have after action reports and looked at the way we implemented the first time, and now we've sort of refined the program, and we've gone out to every federal agency now. We went through with OPM and the Chico Council to request from other agencies volunteers who wanted to go and they wanted to deploy. So what it is a 30-day deployment to the front lines. You'll be helping us with missions throughout FEMA. It is the requirements for the program is that you should have a travel card. If you have a travel card, you're able to go to Anniston, Alabama, where you're going to get a week of training. So there's no training required or no preset skill set that's required for you to be able to perform these functions. You'll get an opportunity to go to training, and then you'll deploy to the front lines for 30 days.
So what kind of skills do you especially need?
So what we're seeing is if agencies are providing individuals that have unique skill sets such as 2210s or IT, we put them towards IT functions. If they're sending HR professionals, we send them towards HR. But the general grouping of people that we're receiving are working in our IA mission, which is our individual assistance. And that's helping survivors enroll in assistance. So you'll meet with survivors, you'll take their information, you'll help them log in, you'll walk them through the process, and that'll help them register for assistance. So that's generally what a lot of people are doing.
So do you anticipate, given Maria's landfall and Jose is out there, right? Is this going to be expanded, do you expect?
So we've done the initial push. We're continuing to have communications with the department. We're trying to get out a little more guidance to help agencies understand how the process works. We're hoping, and I don't want to say hope, we're prepared to expand the program and continue to bring volunteers in. We're establishing other staging areas or staging bases for individuals to be able to go in and get the training and be able to go out on the front lines. What I do want to make sure is that you find out what your agency's point of contact is and you get their information. They'll help you facilitate the process to be able to come in and actually support Surge Capacity Force. It's basically set up to really work through your organization. But it is a very good opportunity for you to be able to go out and help FEMA and be a part of a one government type initiative to provide support to survivors.
So I realize the call just went out last week, but what kind of response have you had? Is it too soon to say?
It's a little soon to say. I mean, we've gotten quite a bit of one-off responses. So a lot of individuals calling, asking for questions. We've coordinated a couple of different calls with HR departments so we can answer some of those questions. It is you would be surprised about the considerable amount of federal government employees who want to be able to find a way to help. And in those ways where you are generally donating money, this is where you can donate your time. And we're getting a good response from that. So,
and the way this works, agencies continue to pay these employees who are then dispatched for FEMA for this limited time.
So there's what is considered a mission assignment. So FEMA will pay your agency for any overtime accrued and any travel costs accrued. For the first 40 hours of the work week, your agency will pay for your base salary, or that base 40 hours. And anything above that, FEMA takes care of. Okay. And they reimburse the agency for any cost to the agency.
Well, we'll be watching to see how this plays out. And you said earlier that it was a Surge 4 level?
Yeah,
what does that mean?
So we're looking at it in tiers. So our first tier is our PFT employees, our full-time employees within FEMA. The second tier is our intermittent workforce, along with our cadre on-call response employees. Our tier 3 is the DHS surge. So that is all of our DHS partners able to deploy. And then tier 4 is federal government. So it's bringing other federal government partners in. So it's a good opportunity to try this out. FEMA is responsible for the response to all kind of catastrophic disasters. So we're getting an opportunity now to see how this will work and kind of get the opportunity to get people out and help with the mission.
So one thing that all agencies are struggling to manage their workforces in a time of tremendous change, to put it lightly. The sort of the big issue from a federal management perspective right now is the agency reform plans that are being developed. You have obviously been involved with DHS, the DHS reform plan, looking at FEMA in particular. What can you tell us about that? And does this hurricane season, is that going to have any bearing on how people perceive the FEMA workforce and the value and necessity?
Well, I will say that we've gotten some very good news coverage from this particular disaster. I think we were prepared. I think we're responding effectively. So I think the public opinion for FEMA right now and how we're responding has been very favorable. So with the DHS reform plan, so we're a part of the Department of Homeland Security, so any FEMA reform is going to go up through the Department of Homeland Security and part of the entire department's package that's going to go to OMB. The department created an organizational effectiveness working group, and they did that really quickly after the executive order came out. And that particular working group looked at either suggestions from the public that came in through the White House or OMB. I think it was about 55,000 different submissions that came into DHS for them to review. They also looked at it component level and any submissions coming up through the components. So it was sort of a broad brush stroke. The secretary at the time, Secretary Kelly, did not want us to look at it as far as trying to do more with less at DHS. So that was one of his emphasis. He didn't want us to look at trying to do more with less. It was more so how can we make DHS more effective. So that was sort of our approach in looking at the programs that we looked at. So it was it was, I think for DHS, it was a slightly different spin than it was for every other agency, other than maybe DOD, because DHS was growing. Right. So we had to look at the reform plan as far as more of how can we effectively grow, ensuring that we're meeting the administration's priorities. So.
Mm-hmm. That's, for a lot of people, that would be a good problem to have.
Well, it all depends. You never seem to grow quite as big as the requirement. So.
Well, and I'm sure you especially feel that this year in particular. So with regard to managing FEMA's workforce, one of the things that has struck me in watching the response to this disaster, or the recent Harvey and Irma and now Maria, considering previous Katrina, even Sandy, one of the things that is so clear is the very different role that social media is playing in the rescue and recovery operations. And I'm wondering how you train the FEMA workforce to be more responsive in an environment where people are communicating differently under stress, and what, how do you handle that?
Well, I think there's two different parts to sort of your question. Is sort of the social media part of and how we are using social media with our mission, and then the I think the response part of it and dealing with individuals who are under high stress. So I'll take the social media part first and then kind of come back to the high stress side. Social media has helped us tremendously as far as with our mission. So we're able to look at sort of crowdsourcing information and look at information about where we are, where information is, what gas stations are open, what food sources are open, which highways are open, where's things that can impede the public, and we're able to use that information to provide information out. So we have a tremendously talented Office of External Affairs that looks at social media constantly, reviewing what posts are coming up, whether it's through Twitter or other social media venues, and looking for the truth within the social media posts, and then trying to either direct ESF partners in communications or work with that communications to help FEMA decide where we respond and other types of things. So.
Has that staff grown?
Yeah, it's grown tremendously from where we use social media from Sandy to now. I think as an agency, we're continuing to learn. We're learning how to use it better as we go through, as we keep responding to different disasters. So I think some social media has been a tremendous help to us, to FEMA, in that standpoint. Now, as far as the stress level, to be perfectly honest, I'm not sure there's a great way to prepare an individual to go and talk to someone who may have lost everything. What we try to do is we try to have an appropriate amount of stress counselors and those things at the disaster to talk to our employees prior to going out, and then also have that for them when they're coming back. So it's more on the ensuring that they have that ability to sort of de-stress after going through those types of events. It is a very stressful job, so the training of how to calm people down and those types of things in the session, we have that, but I think it's more towards helping them manage their own stress. And
The
their stress
FEMA
levels.
employees.
Yeah, the FEMA employees.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how do you have special training focused on that? Mentoring?
We use sort of a couple of different ways. So we have mental health counselor contracts that we use at the disaster. We also have an employee assistance program that we use for employees at the disaster. So we have a couple of different ways that we have counselors and other people at the disaster to talk to our employees and help them prior to going out and then when they come back. So, but it's not necessarily training for them on how to handle the stress. It's more of an individual one-on-one sessions on how to cope with the stress going forward.
I see. What impact does it seems that much of what FEMA does, it's cyclical, right? And we're in a very high activity, high stress place right now.
Well, they say every season's earthquake season, so you can kind of judge when the hurricanes are going to come around, but yeah.
Right. It does seem right now we've got the wildfires out west. We have it seems like an unusually active hurricane season. And I'm wondering what kind of challenges that creates for you in managing the workforce and planning. So
I think one emphasis I really want to make sure that I get across is the need for workforce planning across the board in every government agency, but the way it's unique to FEMA. So every employee in FEMA is an emergency manager, which means that every employee gets at least 2 different jobs. So they have their steady state job or their job they do on a day-to-day basis. But they also have a disaster role, and that disaster role may be an incident management role where they forward deploy to a disaster, or that role may be a ancillary support role or incident support role where they're working in our national response coordination centers or regional coordination centers, and that's where they're coordinating the federal support to the states. Or it's just that they're deployed in place at their position in their office. And that those types of jobs could easily be, your acquisitions type positions, your HR type positions, and even your external affairs positions that are kind of coordinate the communications. Those are the deployed in place type positions. But everybody gets two different roles. So you're getting trained and you're getting prepared to do your disaster role, but you're also getting prepared to do your day-to-day specific role. That day-to-day specific role is just as important as the disaster role, and they overlap. Where the workforce planning part, I think, comes into play is understanding how to move from steady state, surge up to support disasters, keeping an appropriate amount of employees back to keep the lights on, as we say, and then also being able to then go back down to that steady state. It is a very dynamic context. And what we're seeing with this disaster is we have over 6,000 people deployed, and that's before Maria hits, and we're looking at what we can forward deploy now for the next disaster. So we have about 16,000 employees, both disaster employees and full-time, and we're supporting a disaster, but we are still getting to the point where we're starting to look at how do we have that appropriate mix of also being able to bring them back after they've been out for a while, so being able to transition people as well. So it's I would say the planning part for that is a very interesting mix of how to understand the competencies that are required for both your full-time job and the disaster job, how they mix, the training for that, the hiring for that. That is a very interesting workforce plan. So
It sounds like it. I would like to take questions from the audience. If you have a question, please raise your hand. And there are some. We have one over here.
the lights make it a little difficult.
I know, it's just an interesting setup here.
Hi, Corey.
How
Thanks
you
for making the time to come today. I'm curious about what you were talking about on the surge capacity project. Can you talk a little bit about short-term versus long-term? Shall I drop everything immediately, or do I have a few minutes to maybe get it together?
We need you there now.
Okay.
No,
See ya.
There's time. We are holding those classes on a weekly basis, so it's all planning and scheduling. I don't know how long we're going to continue to do it. We have classes starting each Monday to roll through and train individuals to be able to go. It's not you need to be ready to go today and you're going to get sent out today. You can sort of have some time in scheduling when that'll start. I would say with Maria over Puerto Rico as we speak, the opportunity to continue to help in Florida, also help in Texas, and now the opportunities to help in the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, that's going to continue for a while. So I would say that you have a little bit of time to plan and still be able to participate and help out.
How long does it typically take someone who volunteers to get through the approval process?
So within the department is relatively quick. Since we just started the process for the federal government as a whole, I think what the process will probably be for individuals who are thinking about requesting. It is going to be a request and it goes through a supervisor. The supervisor is going to have to determine whether that employee can leave for 30 to 45 days. So it has to be some sort of inside the agency decision in reference that they can afford for that employee to be out for 45 days. Once that is approved, the submission is made to FEMA. You go into the deployment tracking system. That deployment tracking system will then go to our Surge Capacity Force program where they'll coordinate when that individual is going to attend class. And right now they're just scheduling classes. So it should be relatively quickly, at least within a week, that you'll find out. And we haven't turned anyone away. Mm-hmm. So as long as your travel card is active and it's approved and you have your supervisor support, unless we don't need any more people, I haven't seen us turn anybody away yet. So I would assume if you put in for it, you're going to get accepted.
So really the time factor is on the home
Scheduling.
agency
And the home
level, but FEMA operates pretty quickly. You can turn that around.
Yeah, well, yeah, we
So far.
well, we need to. We need to make sure that so we're also bringing in volunteers and others through different programs. So we've done a pretty good job at getting this logistics part kind of coordinated, especially with sort of the staging areas and to be able to do the training, the just-in-time training, and send people out. So I would say that if you're going to apply, you should hear back from FEMA after it leaves your home agency within 2 to 3 days.
That's quick. That's good. Other questions?
One more
we
question.
have?
Hey, Corey, good job with FEMA. It's a question, is the surge program open to volunteers that are retired federal employees?
Good question. So if you're a retired federal employee, my suggestion would be is that you apply to FEMA through some of our intermittent or temporary positions. We do have certain authorities that we're able to waive the annuity for a certain amount of time based on the disaster. So I would say that's probably the better program for retirees to apply to. If you go to the FEMA.careers page, you'll see all of the opportunities. We have the opportunities listed out across multiple different locations because we have incident support call centers where we're taking calls directly from survivors that those positions are posted. We have the local hire positions that are posted for Harvey or for Irma, and we'll have those positions posted for Maria as they become available. I think that is probably a much better process for those individuals who are retired. For volunteers, we have also on the careers.gov page, we have a list of different agencies that or voluntary organizations that we work with, that if you want to volunteer, that information is on the website as well. Or if you want to share it with individuals who want to volunteer, that information is there as well. So it's a couple of different ways for either volunteers or retirees to support. But thank you for the question.
I think your workforce has just grown in the course of this conversation.
Hope so. We need it.
So other questions do we have? They're just hard to see. Okay. So going forward, we have just a couple more minutes here. What keeps you up at night, Corey? I mean, this just seems like such a big job at such a critical time, and I'm wondering how you prioritize your concerns.
I think what probably keeps me up at night is ensuring that the workforce is ready, that the workforce understands supporting the programs and ensuring we have enough staff to support the survivors. We just don't want another opportunity where it looks like FEMA didn't plan or FEMA wasn't ready. There's some of these social issues are impossible. Let's just say, I mean, some of the disasters are impossible for us to be able to provide an appropriate response. The federal government isn't built to be able to always provide the perfect response. But we want to at least be there and help survivors in the best way we possibly can. So we don't want to seem like we weren't there and we weren't providing support. So what keeps me up at night is not being involved in another disaster where FEMA dropped the ball. So I want to be able to provide the appropriate staff at the appropriate level and appropriate training to be able to help our senior leaders respond to disasters and do it appropriately.
That's seems like a perfect place to end this conversation. And again, thank you so much for taking time out of your day at
Thank you.
such a key time.